Alright guys, welcome to this video. I wanted to talk today about Odd Rogue because I had a lot of success playing it before patch 18.2 that's dropping on September the 8th, and I think it's going to continue to perform well after that patch is released. Obviously Darkglare, a lot of takes, most on the side of Darkglare as we know it now not really existing. I think it'll still be strong, but that's not what this is about. What this is about is Odd Rogue. I took it to Legend on Europe. I did most of my climb on NA with it, and I think it has a lot of potential going forward. So this is what we're here to talk about. This is the list that I played to Legend on EU this current month of September, and it looks pretty standard. But there were a couple of cards that I wanted to talk about specifically because there's a lot of back and forth. You know, you'll see cards like Dr. Krasnov in here. Like Jandis is a popular one that I get thrown at me, and we're going to address those. Beneath the Grounds is a big topic. It has been on the stream the last few days. So we're going to get into it. Let's start breaking this list down here with what I find being core. So here's what I have pulled for the core. It's a majority of the list because, you know, Odd Rogue has obviously been around for almost 2 years as a deck itself, and it's evolved many times, fallen in and out of the meta, but with the introduction of some new cards here as well. So here we go. I think the pirates are super important. We're not touching those. With the release of Cutting Class and Toxin Blade, we're really going weapon heavy, right? Quest Mage being a big threat after this patch. I think you want to go with leaning into as much weapon damage as you can because they're not running cards like Frostbolt. They're running the Ray of Frost, of course, but that's only targeting minions. They can generate stuff like Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Freezing Potion, but you know what? That's just stuff that you're going to have to deal with. It's a part of the nature of that class, that deck. So it's fine. Not really much you can do. New cards like Secret Passage, Tour Guide are so good. Of course, Secret Passage is getting nerfed, but it's really like a soft blow in the ear that's happening to it. Nothing really detrimental to the card's actual effect. Tour Guide is unbelievable. We know because of, you see what it has done in Darkglare, Warlock, and that's mostly where you see it, but in Odd Rogue, it gives you the flexibility to save hero, like if you can just fit it in for the 1 mana that it costs and carry its hero power over to the next turn, it dodges cards like Bloodless Ooze, Kobold Sticky Finger, so that if you plan on playing weapon buffs, you can safely equip a weapon for 0 and still have the mana, of course, to play the weapon buffs that you're looking to play, and then proceed to, you know, push that damage. Great. And then of course you got the old reliables, Henchland Thug. Leroy Lotheb is absolutely core, with Reno Priest obviously untouched, and Quest Mage coming back. Vilespine, I don't think you can cut Vilespine. It's just, you know, you have no answers for big minions, and of course you have to play the big beast guy, this moon guy. So here we go. This is what I have for the core, and now we'll talk about some options that I have either played with or I think you can consider certainly putting into the deck going forward. Spy Mistress and Swashbuckler. Now these guys, I've been playing Spy Mistress, as you can see, but a lot of people have asked me about, you know, Swashbuckler, and is getting a pirate on turn 1 the best thing you can do because you're pulling patches and you immediately have 2 things that your opponent has to deal with, blah blah blah. We know how good pirates are. They have been for a long time. Spy Mistress being stealthed as a 3/1, I mean, it's the most damage that you can represent on turn 1 when you're on the play, and it can't be interacted with that first turn, so it's guaranteed connecting for 3 damage, which, okay, it could sound underwhelming, but for 1 mana, that's perfect. That's exactly what you're looking to do. Getting ahead right away. If it turns out that the meta's more aggressive that I'm anticipating here. I think Kingsbane's still going to be really good, so that's going to be around for sure. Pirate Warrior's really good against West Mage, so there's that. Right, so we're gonna see how that goes. I'll make a follow-up to this, but again, just what I'm speculating here is that it's going to be mostly Quest Mage and Reno Priest, at least for the first week or two, getting back into it. So I think Spy Mistress is the way to go, but keep an eye out for the Swashbuckler inclusion. Next is Wand Thief, which I'm also playing right now. I think Wand Thief is incredible, and because at that it's more consistent than Swashbuckler, right? You get to discover a mage spell, so you can get obviously some freeze effects if you're playing an aggressive matchup. Cards like Counterspell or Ice Block are okay. Counterspell is especially good against the Reno Priest because you can, their removal is not always cheap, especially if they're forcing Polkelt out early. They're only going to be drawing expensive removals. Counterspell can really see a lot of value there, but just the overall versatility it can give, presenting you with 3 options, of course, and Mage has a ton of burn, right? And we're at the end of the day, we're trying to kill people with this deck. We're just trying to get our damage in as fast as we can and close out the game. So having a potential extra source of burn is really important, I feel like. Next, Beneath the Grounds. This has been thrown at me on stream a lot. I've had a couple people just come in, and first message they ever send in the channel is, hey Bat, why aren't you playing Beneath the Grounds for Reno Priest? And I didn't want to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it because it's been asked so many times. Beneath the Grounds, obviously, you shuffle in the 3 spells that summon the 4/4 Nerubians when they're drawn. Yes, that disrupts Reno Priest. That's all well and good, and great. The deck is so good at getting onto the board and presenting board states to your opponent that are difficult or unusual to deal with. It's, depending. And taking 3 mana off when you're an aggro deck, you're basically just conceding 3 mana to your opponent and saying, okay, I'm going to turn off 3 cards in your deck. They're all obviously very high impact cards, but we're going to turn those 3 cards off to sacrifice my own tempo. I don't agree with playing Beneath the Grounds. I understand why people find it intriguing, but most people aren't including it. While, even though a lot of people are asking about it, it's a fine card. If the meta was slower, maybe, but Quest Mage is too fast now. It's too consistent. I don't want to draw that card against that matchup. I don't want to draw that card against aggro decks. It's only against Priest, and Priest is only as good as Quest Mage is. And it won't be as good as Quest Mage is. So, I don't think it's an inclusion. But it had to be noted. Coerce. Coerce is good against bigger minions. Not something I really think makes a lot of sense, but it's a cheap enough removal. It's a Vile Spine without a 3/4 body, and it's 2 mana cheaper. It's got a good effect. It's completely dependent on what you're facing. If Darkglare is still around, it's something to consider because it's so cheap. It is definitely something to consider there. Magic Carpet, which I've been playing in this meta because it's super good into Kingsbane, and it's really good against Darkglare as well, because cards like Bloodsail Flybooter generate so many 1/1s that you can sometimes get away with clearing a giant with your 1 mana minions, or at the very least you're clearing Darkglare with the 1-drops with Carpet. So if the meta, if we see a lot of aggro druid continue to be good, if we see Kingsbane be continue to rise in popularity, I think that Magic Carpet is a really solid inclusion in the deck. And I love Carpet. Who doesn't love Carpet? It's a fun card. Next, I have Boom Pistol Bully, which is good enough against Reno Priest. I feel like it's definitely more on the expensive side, but it's it's a card that if you're going into pre 6 mana turn, it's really good because they're probably, you know, their coin might be gone by then. Most of the time it is because of how they have to match up their removal with your board states, and that would prevent them from playing Reno, which is huge. But that's really all it's for. It's not going to get a lot of value in too many other matchups, but it's something I figured to consider since Lotheb is so powerful. Of course, Lotheb is always going to be better than Boom Pistol, but it's along that same line, so I thought I'd consider it. Captain Greenskin. We know what Greenskin does. Of course, as I was saying earlier in this video, we were talking about how weapon damage is imperative and carrying our weapons to get us to the finish line, because they're the hardest things to interact with. Over the course of you know, the decks that we're seeing in the meta, less weapon removal, and of course the Quest Mage rise in popularity is only going to decrease that, and they have trouble interacting Freezing Face, so it's something to consider. It's not a great tempo card, but the deck has a low curve as it is, and sometimes Greenskin, along with with Krastenov here, that we'll talk about in a second, you know, sometimes they get you that extra attack that makes cutting class cost 0, and that's the nuts, right? Krastenov, I've run into a lot of problems because I played Krastenov in my list for a majority of my NA climb, and it wasn't very good. When it resolved, it was excellent, but most of the time on turn 5, the way that you'll run through games with the deck, you actually won't have a weapon equipped on 5 unless you have a tour guide after your first dagger, which isn't that often. So Krastenov really for me wasn't getting a lot of value just because of how the deck plays out. It's a really strong card, of course. It's definitely better than Greenskin in a vacuum. You know, it relies on having to attack a minion, of course, at first, and probably not strong enough right now to include, but it's a new card, new legendary. Definitely wanted to talk about it. Jandis is another popular card that people have been asking me about. It's very, very strong in standard. In wild, a 5-mana 2/1 summoning 2/5 drops, only one of them surviving. In standard, it's so good because there are a decent amount of 5 drops that have rush. Krastenov and Faceless Corruptor, 2 that quickly come to mind. But in wild, that pool is much more diluted. There are a lot of weak 5 drops that, you know, you got 5-mana 1/1s, 5-mana 2/2s, and they're everywhere. That pool is not great. So I think it's way less consistent, so way less powerful. But when you high roll, it's disgusting, and that's fine. You take your wins and your losses with cards like this, but I would stay away. I would advise to stay away personally. Ziliax is in here because, and completely because of Kingsbane Rogue, and of course, if you know you run into the mirror matches, if Odd Rogue gains some popularity, which I assume it will, Ziliax is excellent because the deck obviously has no healing outside of this card, and it can. Kingsbane is exhausting because they're not running Myras anymore. They're exhausting all of their resources. So if they don't have passage, it's just that weapon attacking you. If you can have a Ziliax clear a minion and, you know, they stop running backstabs and stuff like that, you're looking at, you know, a durability on that Kingsbane plus 3 heal, plus not damage to your face, which is all huge. So Ziliax, meta dependent, of course, but something I would 100% consider. Okay, so I appreciate you guys going through all of this with me. I'm excited to see what the new patch, you know, tells and shows us what the Trollman's cards can do, because we're basically looking at the Outland meta plus a couple new cards here. But I appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys are ringing that bell, and more stuff coming soon, and I appreciate you. All right, happy climbing.